speaking as a non-expert about my colleagues' backgrounds and what they do. I think I'm just going to hand it over to each of them in order and ask them to take about 5 minutes to introduce yourself and talk about your work.
Great. My name's Fijitsu and I'm with Better Place. Great. Am I okay without the mic? Yeah. Loud and obnoxious. So, quick question. How many people here have had to help a parent, aunt and uncle in explaining them, and a parent, an older person, how to use a cell phone? Like you plug it in at night and you use it during the daytime and you talk on a subscription-based plan where you buy a certain number of minutes per month, and that's how it operates. Now, has anybody looked at how their cell phone actually charges? I know there's, Inderdeep, where are you? I know you know how your cell phone charges for sure. Which is, you plug it in for about, well, you plug it in your bedside table and it's charging all night. But is it really charging all night? No, it's charging for about 20 minutes. And big picture, a cell phone is a widget that enables you to talk to people, and an electric car is just a widget that runs on electricity that enables you to get where you're going. Really simple. And what Better Place does is enables that electric car. So what do? We install charge spots. That's the place where you plug it in at home, at work, and in the middle place. To get those long distance ranges, because you don't want to have a 10,000-pound battery to have 10,000 miles of range in the back of your car. The batteries are exchangeable, and we own the batteries, and that does the other thing which makes the car cheaper, because if we own the battery, you don't have to pay for the battery. We operate on a subscription-based plan. And in the morning, because we are in control, we orchestrate and aggregate all of those batteries together to support the grid. So we have networks that support the grid. Just some picture of the charge spots. This is sort of boring. It's just a place where you plug in the car, and it's at 208, 240 volt. So you have to have some special safety, because in the US we're operating 200 volts. You know, in Europe they're not. That's okay. They lose 10 or 15 people. The battery switch stations. The battery switch stations will be located along the highways as you go from the long distance driving, and a few in town, because in town there's a particular flavor of vehicle that doesn't have the time to recharge. And a recharge normally takes about 10 to 20 miles per hour. So if you drive 40 miles a day, your car needs to be plugged in to charge about 2 to 4 hours. And remember, you drive home, you plug it in, and it won't start to charge because we're orchestrating and aggregating all that demand. So we don't charge on peak to damage PG&E. But that one particular flavor of car that can't be charged is the taxi. And if we can run this video about what we're doing in Tokyo. So if anyone's in Tokyo in the next couple months, I'd really encourage you to try one of these vehicles.
Today is a monumental milestone. It's the first time commercial cars actually go on the road, driving at the toughest possible test that you can have. And you'll be able to say that you were there on April 26, 2010, when the first electric taxi actually took to the road in Japan.
The first EV taxis will be able to switch their batteries here, and by switching the batteries they will be able to extend the range. The battery switch process takes as little as 60 seconds, and that's much shorter than filling up a regular taxi. Here we are capable of handling as many as 12 batteries to ensure a constant supply of freshly charged batteries to the EVs. The batteries are charged in a temperature controlled environment, and that ensures safety, reliability, and efficiency of the batteries.
Most car makers said it was impossible. Today, not only is it possible, it's actually driving in the street, picking up passengers.
It's important to prove our concept in Japan, because Japan just doesn't believe in the conceptual thinking only. You have to show things actually works. So it's very important to physically to demonstrate what we can do. Well, in Tokyo, taxis represent 2% of the total cars, but they're responsible for 20% of the total emissions. So by eliminating taxi emission, we'll be eliminating a large chunk of tailpipe emissions. If
if you have a taxi driver going to Tokyo, every day we've done 30 demonstrations to 30 different people that electric cars are better. And I guarantee you they're going to ask the driver, does this thing really work? And when they say not only does it work, it works better, it's quieter, I actually like it better than my older taxi, you got the ultimate demonstration.
So that's the fun, exciting part. If you're in Tokyo in the next couple months, please go try one of those taxis. Now I want to go back into the smart grid component of it, because like I said, we own the batteries and we aggregate and orchestrate all of the users. So we know where these vehicles are charging and when they're charging at battery switch stations in the home and the offices, and we take that in to integrate to the grid. And why that is so important, and we heard that from Smud earlier. Israel is our first country of launch. It has a 12 gigawatt electric system. If all their cars went to electric, they'd add an additional 2.5 roughly gigawatts of power. They'd need to build that much more electrical generation. But if you go to managed charging, in other words, this orchestration of all of those vehicles, you actually don't need to add any more generation. This is Hawaii. This is a fun part. How many electrical engineers do we have here? Actually, pretty good. So how important is it to stick to 60 hertz on the electric grid? This is the frequency in Hawaii, and this green line here is wind power, 10 megawatts of wind power. And what happened? It tanked, and it tanked over literally over less than 50 seconds. And during that time, it took them about 2 minutes to start up the emergency diesel generators. And what happened during that time when that wind power tanked? And do we have any control over wind power? No, it could happen anytime. The frequency dropped, and so that meant everything slowed down. And they had this break. Now, if you had roughly 3,000 EVs and simply stopped charging them for that 300-second, 5-minute period while you started up your diesel, your emergency backup diesel, you wouldn't have never had this drop in frequency. And this is really important because my kids like to go to Hawaii.